Is there somebody that you had in your life that like this is the person that I always, when I had a problem, I either went to them or I looked up to them because of some reason? Or did you have like a story in particular that really inspired you in your life? That is something that you always kind of revisited as you got older. I want you guys to think about that for a moment. Is anybody who is that person? Usually they ask like, who is your hero? You know, who is that person? Does anyone want to share? You can also type in the chat because I can see the chat. You know, who is the kind of person that you always looked up to and you actually wanted to learn more about? Dad. Yep, that's usually the a big one.
Second thought.
Second dad, yeah, looking up to dad. Jesus, very spiritual. Very wholesome. My sister, okay, wow. Sister, mom, all right. All right, so we got a lot of family members. Like, everyone looks up to their family. You guys must have great families. I definitely want to say, okay, my husband, okay, you look up to him because he's much taller than you, right? That's what I know about it. I think you have no choice but to look up to him. Yeah, you can't see Chris, but Ina's like this tall and Chris is like this tall, so that's what I think. Holy Trinity, okay, yes, that's who you look up to. Maybe I'm the only nerdy one here. I looked up to my physics teacher. Wow, this is pretty bad, right? I mean, it's telling a lot about me. But yeah, see, there are certain reasons why I looked up to him. But yeah, why did you look up to your parents? Like, what is it that made you look up to them? Like, why is it that, you know, what was the value? Actually, I asked you guys, did you guys have anybody you actually looked up to? You already said dad, yeah. Did you have somebody you look up to? Maybe not really. It doesn't have to be a real character.
Well, there was this like lady in the Holocaust.
Oh, okay, really? What's her name? Oh my God. Anne Frank? Oh, okay. Okay.
Like elementary school when I was like really impressed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was impressive about her?
She like sent out these publications that were very like anti-Nazi. And
Okay.
she ended up getting beheaded for it, but she was like,
Oh gosh.
16.
Uh-huh.
So
Wow. So you must have looked up, maybe she's very brave.
yeah.
Okay, what's her name? And not Anne Frank.
Sophie Scholl.
Sophie Scholl. Okay, I'm not sure if you guys know who that is, but Sophie Scholl, right? So you looked up to her because you were brave, or because she was brave. But probably you wanted to be brave like her. I imagine that's why you looked up to her, right? So yeah, I mean, even for me, the reason why I looked up to my physics teacher wasn't because I wanted to be good at physics, okay? It was because there were certain aspects of his life that I really thought he handled very well. It was because he was good at multiple things, and that was something that I always thought was very inspiring. I'm sure you guys, you look up to different people in your life for different reasons, and I'm sure that you're inspired by them for different reasons as well. And so what we wanted to do today is to talk about, you know, the Bible is full of, it's very cool. The Bible is full of stories of people that you can look up to. The Bible is full of stories of people that you can be inspired by, right? If you really know the situation that they were in, then you yourself can receive the kind of inspiration that can allow you to live just like them. So, but to tell you that story, I'm going to tell another story. So as for me, when I grew up in church, how many of you guys grew up in church? Like, you know, basically born in the church. How many of you guys were actually born that way? Okay, 1, 2. Hannah was kind of shaking her head. Desi, maybe. I see a hand there. I see a bald head. I don't know if that. Okay, yeah. I'm sorry. I just there, and I'm never going to stop saying bald head. It's just it's going to be what it's going to be. What about you guys? You grow up in church or ever visit church?
Yeah.
Yeah, grew up in church? Yeah, okay, grew up in church. Kind of?
Not really.
Okay, what was the first time you went?
Catholic church, I mean, I guess, but it wasn't like every week, it was like twice a year.
Oh, okay, twice a year, okay. That's somewhat growing up in church. I guess everyone has their own degree of growing up in church. It's very different, right? So, you know, as for me, what I grew up in, the environment that I grew up in church, I was basically taught that reading the Bible was literal. And it was literal as much as you could possibly be literal. And so I thought everything in life was literal as well as a result of this, not just the Bible. So because of that, I didn't get along with my mom very well, because she would just infer, or she would just imply things like, oh, you know, the dishes are not done, Garrett. This is something that you should This is something I'm just randomly bringing to your attention, right? And there was many people I couldn't get along well because people don't speak literally. That's just not what they tend to do. And but the thing is I thought that people should, because I thought, hey, if God's going to speak literally, why don't people speak literally? Why don't people just tell me what they're feeling and what they're thinking? And why don't they just tell me like that? And as a result of that, when I was in high school, more than anything else, I think you guys could probably tell what was my least favorite class from this story. What do you think is my least favorite class? English class. Yeah, English class was just an absolute nightmare because they always asked me about, what does this mean? And I was like, what do you mean? What does it mean? I read the Spark Notes and they said, this is the flow of the story. And that's basically all I could tell them. But anyway, that kind of thinking actually helped me a lot in math and science, because you actually just had to understand what it was. There was only a single right answer. And there was no way that anybody in the class could get a different meaning out of the same thing. And that was my favorite part about it, right? But whenever you learned in English, everyone would get their own right answer. And I just couldn't stand this idea of everybody having their own reality. I'm like, what kind of world are we living in that you can all have your own reality? And with math and science, you could build cool things, right? I think with whatever book that you read, I'm not sure exactly how many how many rockets you can build with. I don't know, name your favorite book. You guys have a favorite book by any chance? I don't know, they still read. I don't know if ChatGPT is going to obsolete reading very soon. I'm very curious. It's going to obsolete all English classes as a result of this. So who knows what's going to happen in the future. Does anybody up there have a favorite book? Yeah, I'm very curious. Just put it in the chat. I want to see it in a second. But the thing is I didn't really like books very much because it didn't really help me, really live my life that well. Because I just took the story and I just memorized the summary, and then that was what I turned in as a book report, and that was it. But here's the thing, The Giver. Oh, I remember The Giver is something have you guys read The Giver? Yeah, that was even though I had no idea what it meant. I think it's because my maybe fourth grade teacher read it aloud. But it was a very, very interesting book at the time. Yeah, I just remember there was a guy who couldn't see color, and then he could see color. And that was interesting to me because I'm colorblind, and that was the moral of the whole story for me. So I was like, oh, okay, that's a nice book. I guess maybe one day I can see color. Anyway, so because I learned the Bible in Agatha Christie books. That's also very interesting. Surely you're joking, Mr. Feinstein. Okay, yeah, I think I know Mr. Feinstein. I actually don't think I've actually read that one before. Wow, I'm surprised. I'm wondering what genre that one is. So this Bible study that we actually, Agatha Christie. Anyways, interesting chat here. So the person that taught me in all this Bible study that we tend to actually give people, he also had this issue where he read the Bible literally. But because he loved reading the Bible, he read it hundreds of times anyway. Even though he couldn't really understand half the things that he was reading when he was very young, he just read it. But after reading the Bible 100 times, it was so frustrating, he literally buried it. He said, okay, God, if you're going to really put me through this kind of pain, then I'm just going to bury this Bible, make sure nobody finds this book ever again, right? This is kind of like a childlike thinking. He's like, okay, I hope nobody ever finds this again, and put it in the ground. And then what he did is said, this book is useless. And he went to go study textbooks in school. And those textbooks that he studied in school, there were things like chemistry, and there were things like physics, and there were things like biology. So I don't know about you guys. How many of you guys actually have buried yourself in a textbook and really enjoyed it? Anyone here? No? Okay, I don't see anybody raising their hand. Okay, Steve. Okay, he liked textbooks. Okay, that's good to know. What about you guys? You guys like textbooks?
The hands are gone.
No, nobody here likes textbooks whatsoever. Again, I was the one who actually liked that. That was very strange, but that's what helped me in school. So the thing is that after he read all these books, the thing that he felt was like, wow, this is very empty. There's really not much for me to gain from reading all of these books, even though he studied them so much. And so he was so angry that he just threw those books away too. He just decided, okay, I don't need this book, I don't need that book. And he went outside, and in the area that he was in, he just looked at the ground and he saw a bunch of ants. And these ants in the middle of the summer are just working their tails off, trying to, feed the colony, protect the queen, typical things that ants will do. And he was just sitting there going like, wow, you guys are working so hard. What's a meaningless life you guys live, kind of like looking at it as if they were human beings. But he felt bad for them. And so what he did is he found this grub, right? He found like something that ants would typically eat, and he put it in front of them. And he said, you know what? Here, I've solved your life problems. Why don't you guys just eat this, go rest, and then there's nothing else that you guys got to do for the rest of the day. But then as he watched, these ants actually built a line around the grub and then just kept doing the same thing that they would do over and over again, and they ignored the food that they were given. So he's like, I can't believe I just solved these ants' problems, but they didn't really get it. They didn't really get it. So as a result of that, as he was looking at it, he started to think about his own life. He's like, oh, I see. Okay, I think I'm getting something from looking at this situation. What he realized as he looked at this grub is he said, he actually had this inspiration like, hey, why don't you just become an ant and tell them that this grub is the thing that you need to actually solve your problems? But that didn't work, right? He can't just become an ant, right? As much as he actually wants to become an ant, that's never going to work. So what he realized is that God also wants to help human beings. But the problem is, even though he's helping them like this, he's putting this grub in their life. They don't see it, right? They don't actually know that it's him who's doing it, right? And that's what he realized at that time. He's like, oh, I see. Okay. So even though you wanted to help me, even though you wanted me to realize about the Bible, because I didn't understand, I wasn't getting it. So he felt sorry to God because God was actually always trying to reach out to him in different ways through the Bible, but he would not understand it at all. He couldn't understand it. So it's the same for all of us. God is always speaking to you through different means, right? Always through nature and through different things that happen in your life. But the problem is people just don't realize it. The way that we communicate with God is God shows you something, and then he says, in that way, everything is like this. Everything is like this. So today, what we're going to talk about just briefly, if I have to watch the clock here because started a little bit later, but so when we talk about the Bible, the thing is that the Bible is written in parables. The Bible is written in a way that you have to look at it and you have to understand why it's written in that way in order for you to actually get anything out of it. So there's a few verses that I have here, and I'm just going to read them out. Actually, so yeah, I'm trying to figure out. Yeah, so yeah, I don't have the physical Bible here, so we'll just read it out loud. So in Psalm 78, verse 2, it says, I will open my mouth with a parable. I will utter hidden things from of old. So another verse says in Ezekiel 20:49, it says, then I said, Sovereign Lord, they are saying of me, isn't he just telling parables? And another verse says in Hosea 12:10, I spoke to the prophets, I gave them many visions and told parables through them. All right, so what does that mean? That means for every story in the Bible, if you just take the story itself at face value, then you can't gain anything from it. All right, just like this ant, if you just say, oh, these stupid ants, and then you don't get anything out of it, then it really is just a story to you. It's just a summary, right? There's really nothing for you to gain out of it. And the same is true with the rest of the Bible. If you read it and say amen, that's great. You should say amen, but it doesn't really help you to just say amen. The thing is, how do I actually gain something out of it? Yeah, thank you for typing that out, Aaron. I appreciate that. So you have to understand it. If you actually understand the Bible well, then you can use it like a weapon. If you understand the Bible well, then it's like talking to God face to face, because through those parables, you can actually realize more deeply about it. And you can actually read the Bible for fun if you want, because when you actually understand what's going on, then it becomes more like a movie, and rather than just something that you read or somebody told you something about it. Right? So one of the reasons why I asked, yeah, thank you for that. And thank you for posting it all there. I appreciate that. So so I don't know how much you guys have read the Bible, so maybe I'll quiz you guys here. not quiz you, I just want to ask. So I asked you guys, who do you look up to? Do you guys actually have any favorite Bible characters? Those that said Jesus, you don't count. You guys have to say something else now, right? Do you guys actually have any favorite Bible characters? And anyone here, if you guys have one as well. Any character that you really like? Joshua, okay, Jeremiah, okay, Jeremiah, the weeping prophet. Joshua likes Joshua. Wow, that's very edgy. David, okay, David's a good one. Gideon, okay, I like that one. Gideon. All right, Daniel. Okay, Daniel likes Daniel. This is not. Never crossed your mind to say Sarah. It's like there's a lot of biblical name. Aaron, that's another one. Aaron likes Aaron, man. Y'all are just y'all are very, very classy Bible connoisseurs, I should say. The fact that you guys like all that. There's no Emily's in the Bible, there's no Garrett's in the Bible either, but Michael's my middle name. I'm just gonna say Michael's my favorite character. How about that? He shows up at random. How about yeah, but he's a pretty cool dude. Sarah, okay, John, okay. Which John? There's too many Johns. You have to say which one. John of Patmos or John the Baptist, or there's quite a lot of them, but yeah, so for those that didn't say, actually, okay. Yeah, now I want you to think about, why did you like them? Like, what was actually something that you actually liked about those characters? John, the one who wrote John. Okay, that would be John of Patmos, right? Well, who wrote a book? I just love reading the chat. It's actually very interesting to read the chat here. Okay, so Josh liked Joshua because he was bold, he was positive, and he was brave. Okay, all right, that's John of the Bible. Oh my gosh. Oh gosh, this is very, very unique. Okay, so Gideon grew in faith and courage. All right, so all of these people in the Bible, they actually have stories that if you read them and understand them, it will help you quite a lot. And I want to say, even for me, the one that I like the most is also Joshua. So I guess Josh and I have a very similar taste. But question is, do you guys know Joshua's story? Do you actually know Joshua's story by any chance? No, Joshua. Okay, so I won't talk too much about him, but you can just say he's a fighter. He's a warrior. He did many things that were very courageous. And so a lot of guys like him for that reason, because he actually solved a lot of his problems by being bold, right? That's actually what happened. And so Joshua was somebody that I looked up a lot to in the Bible, because in many cases, when you actually read what he went through, he was inspiring because he was overwhelmed about 100, like he was always overwhelmed in his life. He always had so many things against him, but he was able to overcome that. Right, but I want to talk about one person that no one talked about here, which is very interesting, is Peter. I want to talk about Peter. You know Peter, like St. Peter's Basilica, Peter? It's the same dude. Did you ever visit that by any chance? You ever go like, anybody visit like Vatican?
I think.
No way. Did you actually visit there? Last summer, okay, you actually went there. St. Peter's Basilica. Yeah, I've never been able to go that far. I'm very curious how many of you guys actually went there. Very interesting. Yeah, okay. Anyway, very famous dude. Right, but at the end of the day, he was just a regular person. It wasn't anything special for, yeah, I'm sure it was breathtaking. I'm sure there's actually quite a lot of things going on. Yeah, because it was built in his name. But the thing that's so remarkable about Peter is that he was just somebody that, he was a very average person. And so what I want to do is just give a very simple story that he was actually with Jesus. So let me actually share this story here. Hoping you guys can actually read it. Okay. Wow, that's just huge. I'm surprised that it even shows up like that. Okay. Wow, that shows up even worse. Oh, to make it a little bit there. Actually, I can read it on here if that works. Yeah. I think maybe you guys can't really quite read it here. But let me try to read it. So this is in Matthew 17, 24 through 27. It says, after Jesus and his disciples arrived in Capernaum, the collectors of the 2 drachma tax came to Peter and asked, doesn't your teacher pay the temple tax? Yes, he does, he replied. When Peter came into the house, Jesus was the first to speak. What do you think, Simon, he asked. From whom do the kings of the earth collect duty and taxes? From their own sons or from others? From others, Peter's answered, then the sons are exempt, Jesus said to him. But so that we may not offend them, go to the lake and throw out your line. Take the fish you catch, open its mouth, and you will find a 4 drachma coin. Okay. All right, so what was going on here? I'm just going to summarize. Jesus had to pay taxes, just like everyone else. All right, there was nobody who was exempt from paying taxes. And when the temple tax collectors came to Jesus, they said, hey, you claim to be a religious person, then you should know that there's a tax that you have to pay. So how come you're not paying the tax? And so when Peter went to Jesus and asked him, hey, so are we supposed to pay tax? Are you too cool for school? Aren't you supposed to be paying taxes here if you're a religious person? And then Jesus fired back and he said, you know what? Do you think I'm the kind of person that should be paying taxes? He basically said this, whom do you think the kings of the earth collect duty and taxes? From their own sons or others? And Peter answers, of course, the sons are exempt. So Jesus was talking about himself here in a very colorful way. He was saying, hey, the kings of the earth, right? If I'm a king, am I going to go tax my own family for which I'm the ruler of the country? So Jesus is asking this question so that Peter will realize, oh, yeah, in this way, Jesus, you're the son. You told me about that, right? I remember that you talked about this kind of thing before, and it started to click to him. But here's the weird part. He didn't just say, well, then I'm not going to pay. He actually told him, okay, go to the lake and throw out your line. Take the first fish you catch, open the mouth, and you will find a 4 drachma coin. So he said, hey, to solve this problem, go fishing. That's what we're going to do to solve this problem. Yeah, I'm not sure you can see it that well here, but have you heard the story before, Angie?
Yeah.
Yeah, like where this person actually solved the problem of finance by going fishing. That would be a great thing. I think we could get rid of all of our student loans and we could get rid of all of our mortgages. If every fish could magically have this extra coin in their mouth, that would be just fantastic. So what do you think about this story? Have you ever, if you've heard the story before, even when I was growing up, I remember hearing the story and just being like, amen, I believe that God can make these kinds of things happen. But at the same time, I never really saw it happen in my own life. And I didn't really meet anybody that had. But what do you think about it? Like, have you, well, I guess it sounds like inflation. I need to go fishing more. Yeah, that's what happens. If God starts putting money in fish's mouth, we definitely have inflation. That's going to be a big problem for sure. But what do you think? I mean, we've been talking about this basically until now, is how should we try to understand this? What's the method by which we actually try to understand it? Yeah, okay, just go fishing and see if you can make it happen. Maybe that's one way to do it. Have you heard this kind of story? So what do you think? Like, any ideas? Like, how should we take this and how should we use this for our faith? So I think when I think about these stories, it's like, there's got to be a reason why God put this in here. That's always what I wonder. It's like, why did you put, out of all the stories that you wrote, I mean, if I had a Bible, it'd be like this thick. It's like, there's quite a lot of stories in there, but how do I actually find one, or how do I actually use these stories that are in there? It's just so not clear. So I'm trying to stop share, but you can't see my mouse. That's very interesting. Okay, just invisibly got it there. That was quite interesting. So here's the thing that you have to know about this story, is that Jesus had this relationship with Peter, and there was a time that he said, hey, Jesus said to Peter, hey, follow me and fish for people. Right? That's how Peter started to follow Jesus. He said, follow me and fish for people. And so when he did that, don't you think it's a little weird that like maybe a few months later, he said, okay, yeah, go back out to the ocean and start fishing again, because that's how we're going to solve problems. Right? That's the kind of thing that, if you think about it, it's a little like, why would Jesus do that kind of thing? And also, the one thing that we know about Jesus is that he spoke in parables, right? A lot of the times, right? I don't know if you know any of the other parables that he talked about, right? There's parables of the vine, right? There's parables of how he talked about the vineyards. I'm very curious. You guys have many parables that I'm sure that Jesus actually spoke. So I'm very curious as to what you guys think about. Which one of those parables are your favorite? I still think mine is don't throw your pearls to pigs. That's one thing that I always always comes to my mind, but because I think it took me the longest one to figure that one out. Maybe that's why that was my favorite. I was like, once I got it, I was like, oh, it's clever. Okay. That's a clever way to think about it, right? So Jesus actually always told his disciples, you know what? I'm always speaking in parables. And he did that for many reasons. And one of them was because through parables, people could actually understand more deeply what he was talking about. And also through parables, when he wanted to say something controversial, he could say it without people getting mad about it. Right. So I think that was a great way to do it. I mean, the way we do that in our modern era is called slang. Right. We always just, there's different ways to do that. But he would always start this kind of trend of slang, and I'm sure eventually it got out and then probably became even more controversial doing that kind of thing. But how do we figure it out, right? Because if we're going to say that this Bible is full of parables, how do we figure out what does each one mean? If you look at the Bible, it refers to itself all the way from beginning to end. It's one of the most self-referential books that you can find in the world, kind of like Wikipedia. Like with Wikipedia, you can always click on blue links endlessly as you travel about Wikipedia. I don't know if you've played that game before. You can find your way to almost any article from a few other articles if you so choose. But here's the thing. Because it's a self-referential book, we can actually find out, what does this actually mean? We can find out, how do we make this apply to our own life? Because when you look at this situation, the one thing is that if you want to say that, yes, there was actually a coin in this fish's mouth, you have to be able to answer, okay, why does this make sense? Why would Jesus make it so that this coin would appear in the fish's mouth? And why would God give me this story? Because then it needs to actually happen in real life. But here's the thing. If you read the Bible carefully, you'll see that all of these things that actually happened in this one story showed up in the Bible in one way or another as a meaning for something else. I think you can barely see that. All right, so here in Matthew 17:27, it says, go to the lake, throw out your line, take the first fish you catch, open its mouth, and you will find a 4-drachma coin. There are clear parables here in the Bible where instead of thinking this as a fish, you can think of this as a person. There are many instances in the Bible where a fish is likened to a person. If you actually see, there are prophecies in the Old Testament where God says, I will take them away with fishhooks, the last of them with fishhooks. And it also says, there's also a prophecy in Matthew that says, at the end of the ages, the angels will basically be like sorting fish. The good will go in one basket and the bad will go in another. Right? And this is something that you can see very clearly, right? Because people are like fish. If you think about people, the one thing I know about people is they really don't have their own independence. They tend to just follow the people around them. And that's what fish do, is actually, if you watch fish, they tend to just school, right? That's because they're doing it for protection. And that's how they live their life. That's how they get all their food. But they might think that they're actually all autonomously going here and there, but the reality is they're just following the fish around them. Right? This is something that you always find in the way people tend to act. Right? But you can also say, what is this line, right? Because Jesus uses parable, go fish for people. So what is he actually going to fish for people with? Right? There's got to be something that he actually fished for people with. I'll let you guys actually guess online. If Jesus says, go fish for men, what are you going to use to go fish for men, right? What is the method that you're going to use here, right? See if I can actually draw at least one thing on this whiteboard today. There's got to be something that we're actually going to fish for. What is this thing going to be? I think money is a good answer. I don't know why I read it. Okay, my milkshake. Wow, my milkshake brings all the boys to the yard, right? That's another way to catch people. All right, I like that one. A soccer ball. Oh, these are great. What is that? Is that meat? I can't even tell what that emoji is. That's a very interesting emoji. Okay, T-bone steak. That's how you catch them. So Jesus said, go get a T-bone steak and go find somebody. And that's how you're gonna fish for people. Oh, these are great. These are great answers. Okay, maybe try a little bit more spiritual here. What is he actually gonna catch people with? He's gonna catch people with the gospel. Right? Why did Jesus come to this earth? There was a specific verse where he said, I didn't come to judge everyone. I came to preach the gospel because the gospel is what's going to save people. Right? And so he told Peter, hey, if you follow me, I will teach you how to fish for people. And ultimately, it was the gospel that he would actually catch them with. right? Because when he preached the gospel to people about God and about Jesus, then people would be able to escape the domain of the water, right? That's the world that they live in. And when they actually fished for them, he was able to bring them out of that domain and bring them, well, I don't know if that's good for a fish to bring them out of the water, but that's the parable, right? That's the parable. Is with the net and with the hook, you're actually able to take them out. Right, and the lake is very much like the world, right? It's this very, very large thing where, all the fish hang out, all different kinds of fish. So that's what they're there. So why is this important? Just because, or why is this something that we can even see happen today? I was a professor for about 9 years. I taught in college. And even for me, when I was teaching students, if I taught well, which was not all the time, if I taught well, even they would always bring gifts to me at the end of the semester. Why would they do that? Because I benefited them. It's something that they wanted to do. Actually, I couldn't benefit them after they graduated. Once they were done, they were done. All right, so it wasn't they were trying to like suck up to me so that once they graduated, they could kind of keep a relationship with me. But the reality is they wanted to help me. And so it was the same thing in Jesus' time, because people were thankful, because their life was changed for the better, because they realized how to live their life better, because they lived their life, being able to imagine this eternal life that Jesus talked about. They just said, thank you. And so that's what Jesus was saying to Peter is like, you know what? Money is not a problem. If you live your life serving others, then that problem can get solved. And I don't know what your major is or what your field of study is or what you do. What do you perhaps do for a living? Okay, work at a bank. Okay, that's a cool one, right? The one that won't give me my money. Give me my money. Okay, so you know money well, right? That's the good thing. Okay, so since you work at a bank, you should know very well that money is something that people have, not something that fish have. Right? Something that people go and withdraw. It's not fish that go and withdraw it, right? So that's why this is a very interesting parable, right? Because people have money, they're the ones that if you catch them, if you help them, right? If you work with them, then they also solve your problems, just as you solve their problem. There's this natural like reciprocation that takes place. And so that's why Jesus was this amazing teacher, is because he taught people not how to solve problems in physical ways. He could have just said, hey, Peter, why don't you just go keep fishing? Because he made a lot of money doing that. But the thing is he taught him how to solve his life problems in a spiritual way. Rather than just making money by working, he said, look, if you serve others like this, then they will solve your problems because you solve their problems. Right? And I think that to me was very inspiring when I first learned this a long time ago, because I had no intention of being a professor, zero intention of ever serving people in that way. As an engineer, I just wanted to make things in my corner of the world. And I just wanted to, be the evil genius who sat in the back and make something cool. That's what I wanted to do. But, Jesus really taught differently. He really taught, hey, you know what, that there's a better way. Sure, if you want to help the world, that's great, but there's a better way to solve the problems of this world. So just like this one story, right? We basically read three lines in the Bible. There's so many stories in the Bible that are just like this. If you learn to interpret the Bible, then all of these stories can be things that are connected to your life, rather than just some story that you say amen to a long time ago. But they can be something that you can use in this very day, and it can be something that you actually use to solve very important problems. And so that's why this Bible study that we tend to teach, we start by talking about parables, because to understand a lot of the big things in the Bible, you got to start talking about parables. And if you want to actually use the Bible, and if you actually want to read the Bible, if you want to understand God's language because he speaks in a particular way, then you got to use parables, right? Because there's so many things in the Bible that if you just take it literally, then it's very, very difficult to understand. It's very difficult to get any deep and profound meaning out of. And that's not just the same with how God does it, but it's also the same with how people do it. Because when we talk to each other, I assume that you guys don't always talk in this very dry way where you just say exactly what you mean, but you actually have some kind of slang, you have some kind of way that you prefer to think, or way that you prefer to communicate with each other. Yeah, I want to say that I'm always on these social medias just so that I can keep track of all the slang that's actually, you don't even probably call it slang anymore. Is that what you even call it? There's got to be some some new term for something like that nowadays. So, yes. So when we think about the Bible, it's about us, right? It's not just about somebody that existed 2,000 years ago or 4,000 years ago, or however you want to calculate it. It's about us, right? The Bible was ultimately written for us. And if you want to understand how to use it in your life, then you have to, no matter what, you have to learn about parables. Okay. So that's it for today. That is today's lesson about Peter, and also about other parables that you might find in the Bible. There's just endless amounts. Okay, so that's what we learned about today. And I did use the whiteboard, so you guys can't say I didn't use it. I think even though you guys can't see a darn thing, you guys can't say that anymore, right? All right. Yes. It's always so interesting to see the activity across all of them up there. All right. Professor Garrett, thanks Steve for the support here. Any questions, guys? Any other stories that you, any other stories that you found? That's not what I want to ask. Anyway, I was going to ask is that if there's other favorite parables of yours, because I still think mine is that one I mentioned earlier. Yeah. Any fire? Okay. Have you heard about fire in the Bible? You know where that shows up? The burning bush. Actually, that's a good one. Yeah, I've always wondered about that one. The burning bush. That's right. Yeah, burning bush. That is the one that has been used as a joke for a very long time. Treasure hidden in a field. Yeah, that's one of the parables that Jesus used a lot to basically describe people. He said, hey, the kingdom of heaven is like a treasure hidden in a field. He always starts like this. The kingdom of heaven is like, right? That's more like a simile, but whatever, we can still call it a parable if we want to. But treasure hidden in a field, it basically says, hey, if you want to do something valuable, you got to be willing to dig for it. It's not something that if it was so easily found, then it would already be gone. Right? That's one thing you realize about things that are valuable, is that even you yourself, you have to find yourself too. You have to find what's valuable about you. No one else is going to do that work. All right, that's another big thing about the treasure hidden in a field, is that you got to dig deeply within yourself. You got to put in the effort to develop yourself, and then you can finally discover, oh, that's the me that I can be. Right? That's the person that I can be, and it's the same for other people. So that's it. That's a good one. That's a good answer though. Any other parables that y'all like? I like gosh, what was the other one that I heard? Oh, fire. You just said fire. The bread of life. Okay, all right. Yeah. Yeah. The bread of life. Yes, I want to say that one shows up. There's the hidden manna, right? That's another one, right? That's another one that you tend to see. Yeast of the Pharisee. Yeah, that's also the yeast. There's a scene where Jesus is like, beware of the yeast of the Pharisees and Sadducees, and all the disciples are like talking about bread. Like, should we be afraid of bread? I didn't know that was something we should be afraid of, but yeah, he's like, the yeast. Foot fungus. Okay, I'm not sure. I'm not sure exactly where that shows up. Oh, the yeast. Okay, that's what he calls it. The yeast kind of looks like foot fungus. So anyway.
That's when you wash their feet.
Oh, that's gross. That's something I did not know. But anyway, yeah, there's a lot of very interesting parables there, and I want to say that if you look at the New Testament, Jesus always has like this very clever burn for people, right? He always calls them certain things. Like King Herod, he was a fox. He's like, go tell that fox, that I don't need your help, right? Basically something like this. Or he would always call certain people dogs. I'm like, wow, that's a little savage for you to be calling people dogs, Jesus. Yeah, Jesus was very colorful with his language. He basically said that your people are making the temple into a den of robbers. It's another one. It's like, okay, but what are they stealing? They weren't stealing people's stuff, but they were stealing God's stuff. So that's why I always use this kind of language. So anyway, all right. Yep, that is it for the parables for today. Hopefully y'all learned something about all the parables that are there in the Bible. We've covered a few if you guys have been here. And so thank you guys for joining the series here. There's actually a few things that we tend to cover all at once. Last time we talked a little bit about fire. And so you guys know a little bit about this one as well. But there are many more different parables in the Bible, and we can always study endlessly about them. But today, I just wanted to give a single example about how one particular parable could be used for your life. So thank you guys so much for joining. We will keep doing this each week, and we will also be rotating different people so that we will keep it interesting, because I also want to hear stories from other people about how the Bible has affected them in a positive way as well. All right. Okay. Good seeing y'all. We will see all y'all later. Have a great rest of your evening. Yeah, you guys, I can turn this around. So you guys can
Oh,
see. Oh, you guys are in the reflection. You guys can just wait for the reflection. That's how it works here. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.